The province is framing its new Election Statutes Amendment Act as a way for people to participate in direct democracy. Bill 54 proposes to overhaul a bunch of election laws. The one that's getting a lot of attention, measures that would lower signature thresholds and extend the time allowed to collect those signatures for citizen-led referendum initiatives and MLA recalls.
The bar was impossible to achieve. So we wanted to try to create something that was a little bit more reasonable. I'd like to see a lot more citizen-initiated referenda on issues of importance.
Of course, this has stirred up a lot of talk about separation, but there's also been other referendum questions being thrown around too. For example, whether to ban coal mining. First of all, let's get one thing out of the way. A petition like this one online doesn't meet the standard to trigger a referendum. Citizen initiatives must be approved by the chief electoral officer. Then there's a process and rules around getting physical signatures and verification before an actual referendum can get underway. Here's what changes are on the table. The signature collection period would go from 60 to 90 days for MLA recalls and from 90 to 120 days for a citizen's initiative or referendum. For a recall, the threshold is now 60% of voter turnout in that riding in the most recent provincial election, up from 40% of registered voters in that riding. For a referendum, that threshold would be 10% of voter turnout rather than 10% of all registered voters. So is this the way to give citizens more of a voice? Experts are mixed on the approach.
The groups that are going to be able to take advantage of this, to the extent there's anything to be taken advantage of here, are going to be, in my view, the organized groups that already have the sophistication and institutional knowledge to be able to do this. I would suggest.
Referenda in general are controversial. There's political scientists who think that are really suspicious of them and think that they oversimplify democratic kind of questions and they short circuit the kind of deliberation and negotiations that are part and parcel of democratic politics. There's also political scientists and political theorists and philosophers who think that referenda are great, that they are a great chance for more pure, direct democratic input into the process within a wider system that also does feature deliberation.
Sigalet uses UK's David Cameron as an example. The former British PM called the Brexit referendum, campaigned on the Remain side, and then the people voted and had other plans.
I just see some of this as being manufacturing distraction, frankly. So, I mean, to the extent this government can take changes like this and push that conversation in another direction, that's probably something they would be interested in doing.
As for whether these citizen-led initiatives will be easier to pull off,
again, on the referendum stuff, I mean, to the extent these changes are making it slightly more likely that a citizen-based initiative on a constitutional referendum could potentially force the government's hand to actually go forward with that referendum, I still think the thresholds are pretty significant.
Danielle Smith says she'd like to get more than a dozen issues listed on ballots, kind of like how things are in California. Lowering the bar, she suggests, will make that possible.
Most mainstream political science say California is a democratic state. It's a one-party democratic state, but it's a democratic state. Referenda actually help introduce some healthy corrections potentially to it being a one-party dominated state. You can hold the party to implementing certain kinds of things that pass or don't pass, right? Maybe not. Maybe it's a disaster. Maybe that ends up being resulting in boondoggles where you're building things that make no sense because people have voted to do it, right? Rarely is something in politics unqualified good or bad. Most of the time it involves trade-offs.